Okay, everybody, this is my spoiler review of It. Welcome to Derry, Chapter 3. Make sure to sub to the channel and follow me on Instagram for my movie reviews, and I do giveaways as well. It's a really good time I could really use the help. So with this review, I want to start with the flashback that we see from 1908. Then we're going to go to everything with the adults in the storyline, and then we're going to finish off with everything with the kids. Now, we get this flashback in 1908, which is exciting because we know season 3 of the show is going to take place in 1908, revolving around the incident with Pennywise then, which is the Ironworks explosion. Remember, 102 people were killed, 88 children, and this was part of an Easter egg hunt. We don't really see any hints to that in this flashback, but it's cool being there, and I think they gotta obviously save that for season 3. But what we do see is we're at a fair with this boy, who is later revealed to be Shaw, which I thought was really clever how they revealed he was Shaw later on in the episode. You get the clown references, you get down the clown at the fair, of course, but what's really interesting is you see this little kid clown watching Francis from a perspective from afar. You see him twice, and at the end of the scene, you get from his perspective watching Francis again. So it's very important because I believe that was the It entity, and that when he actually went into the freak show and saw that scary man at the end, that wasn't him possessed yet. He was actually being scouted out by the little clown. When he was in that freak show, if you noticed, Andy Muschietti, Mr. It himself, is playing the piano. He actually is playing the It opening theme in chapter 1, which I thought was a nice touch. Always a sad song, too. Now it's his dad who gives him this important slingshot. He'll end up giving the slingshot then to the girl named Rose. Rose is revealed to be the owner of Secondhand Rose Antique Shop. So we've seen the adult version before in the show already, really cool. But we see a scene here that goes further into the timeline. It is Francis being chased by the It entity in the woods, which is this scary man he saw in the freak show in that form, but he's saved by Rose with the slingshot. So a great open to the episode. Now let's go to everything with the adults and how that even connects to that scene. Now there's a big color theme going on in the show, and it really is highlighted in this episode with red. And anytime you see red, it's reminding you of those red balloons in Pennywise, the It entity, and usually bad things are associated with red in general, so that's always a warning sign in this show. You see it here when Chief Bowers visits Hank in the jail cell and he offers him these Pall Malls that are the red version in the red box. Of course, this is coming from a Bowers character. These cigarettes are also important because it's how he's going to try to frame Hank, saying he found the cigarettes he likes to smoke, the Embassy Golds, near the crime scene. He also says, do you know what they do to kitty killers in Shawshank? So there's your Shawshank reference. We saw in the trailer the Shawshank bus. So I'm imagining we're going to see Hank sent to Shawshank at some point, unfortunately, but obviously big Stephen King prison there. Now, we got the cliffhanger last week of them finding that car at the dig site. So they didn't find what they wanted in the car, but we learned the car is from the 1935 cycle of It, the Bradley Gang Massacre. This is going to be season 2. So it explains why Hallorann had a connection to it. But Shaw wants to keep using Hallorann and get closer to his target, which is this It entity and its headquarters. And the plan, like we saw last episode, for Leroy Hanlon is to protect him because Leroy is not someone who is sensitive to fear. And we see Shaw has his slingshot from his childhood to guide Hallorann. So we see Hallorann is the human compass in the air, which was a really cool scene. Of course, he's got the red behind him, knowing now he's connecting to the It entity as he's touching the slingshot. And we'll see Hallorann now having a full episode here. And he's connecting to the Pennywise lair, so he's hovering over it somewhere there. We see the Pennywise dancing clown box, which got me really excited thinking we'd actually see the clown here. But I love at this point, like I said, I've turned around loving that they keep teasing Pennywise. We haven't fully seen him yet. But we see the eyes of the It entity, and we hear Bill Skarsgård's voice, "Who are you?" And it's important this scene because Hallorann will talk about later that they shouldn't even messed with this entity and looked for it, because now you're just adding attention to everybody here and how dangerous this entity is. Now, I think when he's seeing all these war scenes, it's just Pennywise giving him his fear of this flashback of his war trauma. Hallorann also sees in the floating people, we see his grandma. And she's like, he's coming, Dickie, get out of here now. So I think the grandma is part of the 1908 story, and we'll probably see a lot of Grandma Hallorann in season 3. Now, with the character of Rose, we will see that in the flashback, she already knew that people forget things when they leave Derry. So she knew a lot as a young girl. And from what we know, she hasn't left Derry. So she actually has the memories of her time with Shaw and the It entity. And we see that her nephew is seeking out the entity as well. That was the group that was watching the dig site last episode. It's cleverly revealed that Shaw was the kid. I love it's revealed by him visiting Rose in the shop, and it stays true to the lore of what we've seen of Pennywise in the films and how that effect happens when they leave Derry. They don't remember anything. So Shaw literally was just reminded of her name through the situation where they don't want them burying on the sacred grounds. But she wants to know what he is really up to. But Shaw wants to work together with her on this. He wants her trust. And I love there's a little love story between those two from the past, and that she gave Shaw the slingshot back, and that Francis said to her, "Promise you'll never forget me," and this summer. So it really feels like it won in a way too, and how it ended with the kids talking about what they experienced and hoping not to forget it. And it adds so much depth to the character of Shaw, which I really like. Now back to Leroy. He has Dick Hallorann over for dinner. There's a moment he opens the door, and again he sees neighbors staring at him. I always wonder, is this just the racist town and these people being awful? Or is it also it taking part of these people and watching him? You always kind of wonder there. They leave that mysterious. We also learn that Leroy has this fear of Charlotte's activism affecting his ascent into the military. So it's going to be interesting what they do with Charlotte in the show and how it affects Leroy's storyline, because they're kind of leaving that to like a blank space right now. And I'm curious what you guys think on that. But I'm sure Pennywise is going to have a field day with that rift with his wife. So we'll see. But Dick asks Leroy where his son is at. And that's going to be important when Dick finally meets Will, because of what Will, we're going to see, ends up seeing this episode, and Dick kind of be able to connect through him, through his mind. But because Dick asked Leroy where his son is at, Leroy's like, "How did you know I had a son? I never told you that." So he knows there's something up here with Hallorann. He has some kind of psychic ability. And Leroy says he felt something in the back of his head before he asked about his son, and it was the same feeling he had when he was attacked by those men in mass. So he knows Hallorann was there. And he's like, "Stay out of my head." But Hallorann says, "You were a man facing death, and you were analyzing things. You didn't have the normal fear that every other man he's experienced had in that moment." He's like, "I wouldn't mess with your type anyway. You're the kind of guy I want to be in the trenches with." So it's showing that value of Leroy and that connection that him and Hallorann are having and brewing, which is really fascinating. Just in general, this episode, the adult storyline was prime, like the best we've seen so far. Really made me interested in all the characters. Now let's go to everything with the kids. Now, it was a little weird that Lilly was right away released from Juniper Hill and what we're seeing. Like, she just got there at the end of last episode, and now she's back, and she's back at school. Just felt odd pacing-wise. But she's close with this housekeeper who gives her wisdom. People only believe what they can see for themselves. And she gives her the charm bracelet back, which has the turtle on it. So remember, turtle that protects them in the books of it. I think they just keep teasing it, but I think they're actually going to give some full visual of that turtle protecting them later on, because they show later in the episode when Lilly grabs Ronnie's hand at the cemetery and they're being haunted, that charm is there in the shot again. It's just teasing we're going to see that turtle. And if not, it's cool that it's still that protecting thing we know about and thinking that way symbolically of the turtle. Now, Ronnie, when she goes to school, she sees written in red on the locker, "Hatchet Hank's gonna fry," talking about her dad. And Lilly will run into Ronnie in the bathroom. Lilly wants to make things right about what happened with Ronnie's dad and feeling like she got him arrested. But she's making the point, like, now if I say anything, really, people are not going to believe me at all because I just came out of Juniper. So she's like, we need proof of the identity, and that she tells Ronnie she saw it again at the grocery store. So this really makes things interesting now where the plot's going with the kids. She brings out the camera. She's like, if we bring the proof, it will prove I'm not crazy and that your dad is not a killer. But they need someone to develop the film. This is where they're going to involve Will Hanlon. And we see we have our group now. It's Ronnie, Lilly, Rich, and Will. I really like this group. I think the chemistry of the kids is just solid. It's a good core four. Now, Rich thinks Will is sweet on Ronnie, which he definitely is. So we're seeing that kind of laid out. And that, I believe, obviously, Ronnie's going to end up being Mike Hamlin's mom. Now, when they're talking about the entity, Rich says that this all sounds like an Orixá spirit, which is this evil spirit that takes form of dead ancestors to scare you. He says he learned this from his uncle that's a priest, but we learn later it was actually his cousin that was telling him these stories. But he learned of a ritual to summon them, and that it has to be at a cemetery with these candles. So there is your plan for what's about to happen, and it's funny because this ritual will still actually end up working. Now, what's also well written here, which I like, is that Will was not totally sold on any of the supernatural or monster stuff yet, but he'll come around by what he sees. Now, when the boys are Following the girls on the bikes, this sequence was nuts. It was great in the cemetery. Already something I definitely remember from this show. This show's been killing it with its horror sequences in general. And I love, like, you're like, oh no, when the Jesus statue moves. Rich sees his uncle. Lilly sees the ghosts of Teddy and Susie. And I love they pass the camera around between all four of them, eventually ending on Will at the crypt. And what does he see? The clown hand of Pennywise, which just gets you hype, and he takes a photo. So they go to develop the film. Of course, they walk through a hallway filled with red lockers, and it just works out that the dark room is a red light, so perfectly works for this scene. You see a picture of Teddy, you see a picture of Susie, but then they show the picture he took at the crypt, and it's a clown. What a great cliffhanger. How exciting is that? Now we're going to get Pennywise, I believe, the next episode for sure. What a great setup. So I was so wrong in my episode 1 review saying they shouldn't have held on to Pennywise. No, this is brilliant what they're doing. I take it back. It's such a great slow build up, and having a cliffhanger like that, awesome. I just love how they revealed that with the kids. So good. This episode to me was a step up from episode 1 and 2. Those were still solid, but this was great. The first great episode to me of the show. The horror was working. Everything with the adults got really interesting real quick, and everything with the kids still stayed solid as it has been the whole show. And the reveal of Pennywise in that photo was freaking awesome, and the flashbacks were really interesting too. So bravo, this was a great episode. I am giving this one a 9.3. Let me know what you thought of it down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment, try to respond as many as I can. Hit that sub button so you don't miss one of my reviews of It Welcome to Derry, and also check out my reviews of Pluribus as well. And I'll see you next time.